After weeks of tension between protesters and ICE agents in the city of Chicago, tension that escalated to the point where agents had to use pepper balls and tear gas just to move in and out of the facility, new security measures are now in place. And with those measures, the protests that once believed they could actually shut down operations have all been but squashed. ICE has cracked down, and the message is clear. They're done playing games. And so let's go ahead and jump into this first video right now, okay, where they're discussing 16 people were arrested. They actually interview one of the guys who was arrested and held for several hours, as well as the new security measures put in place in order to prevent protesters from obstructing agents from doing their job. So let's check this out.
And this morning we're hearing from protesters who were arrested outside the ICE facility in Broadview.
Yeah, ICE agents say at least 16 people were taken into custody during clashes with federal agents. But now elected officials are speaking out, and we're also hearing directly from ICE with more details. Darius Johnson live in Broadview with what both sides are saying and how ICE is responding. Good morning, Darius.
Hey there, ladies. Good Tuesday morning to the both of you. Things look a lot different here in Broadview this morning. First off, the street where the ICE processing facility is now blocked by Broadview police. They are making us park on a different side at this point without access to the facility or in front of the facility, as we've been for the last several weeks since this facility has been here. If you take a look down the street, you can now see that there is a tall wired fence that is now surrounding the building that is blocking off access to get to it. Any agents, it's unclear if those agents will be able to drive through or if they have to kind of show ID and then walk in. You see a couple of photographers walking through here. There are two sole protesters right there at the gate right now, one of them with a loudspeaker. Some of the protesters we spoke to say they were held here for hours, denied basic necessities, then hit with serious charges. Cell phone video captured the arrest of Rogelio Huerta of Berwyn. He showed us his black eye, a result of which he says happened behind the gate of the ICE processing facility. Huerta says he was packed in a small room with dozens of detainees and left without basic necessities. 6 hours later, he was released with a federal citation for assaulting an officer.
They refused me a phone call. They refused food. They refused any kind of essentials that I needed. So if I needed a cover or a blanket, they didn't even have anything for me.
Late yesterday, ICE fired back, calling protesters rioters and defending their actions. Officials say detainees are transferred to other facilities after processing and called allegations about the inside conditions false. The agency also accused protesters of throwing rocks, fireworks, slashing tires, and endangering officers and the immigrants inside. Back out here live, meanwhile, a coalition of 47 elected officials is pushing back, calling the federal response heavy-handed when protesters, journalists, and family members were hit with tear gas and pepper balls over the weekend. We're live in Berwyn this morning outside the ICE processing facility. I'm Darius Johnson, CBS News, Chicago.
All right, Darius, thank you.
God forbid that he had to go 6 hours without eating food or a blanket, all because he thought he could prevent federal agents from doing their job by entering and exiting the facility freely. I mean, what did these people think would happen? When you're trying to prevent federal employees from doing their job, there will be consequences for your actions. And so now he's upset because he was detained for his actions. What did he expect? That they would treat him as if he was staying at a Holiday Inn Express that serves complimentary breakfast between 6 and 9 a.m.? Now, here's the thing about a lot of these activists, where there are some people out there who believe that they are just paid protesters. They're to incite confusion and chaos. And so they don't come from the communities most affected by illegal immigration. They don't live in those neighborhoods where schools are already underfunded, where resources are already stretched thin, and where families feel the real impact. And that's a point that Fox News made a point to highlight. Let's check it out.
In the past hour, protesters were seen gathering outside an Immigration and Customs Enforcement processing facility just outside of Chicago. DHS has been conducting its Operation Midway Blitz in that state of Illinois, and federal agents deployed tear gas and non-lethal munitions at that crowd. ICE reportedly taking one of those protesters into custody. Apparently, that person tried to block a van from leaving the facility. Charles, I interviewed the deputy director at ICE, excuse me. And one of the things she talked about was just the threat against them because of this sort of thing, that they have to take this so much more seriously than they ever have because of the rhetoric on the left that has put them in peril potentially from people who might come out. Because otherwise, I mean, you can protest, but that's their main concern. It's up 1,000% those attacks on ICE officers.
There's this physical intimidation and the demonization and them having to resort to wearing facial covers. It's just really, it's so hard to believe. And Chicago, of all places, think about, just in the last couple of years, what we saw were, waves and waves of illegal immigrants pushing up rents, crowding out schools that already didn't have enough teachers per student, taking resources, where the poorest people in Chicago ended up having more desperate lives. And you're protecting this, you're willing to go and put yourself in harm's way. I mean, they're performing a lawful duty, and to interfere with that is just absolutely mind-boggling in my opinion. And it's just really amazing, and a lot of credit to
ICE. And it's against the law.
For more things. Nothing bad has happened yet. And yet these folks are pushing the envelope as far as you can push it.
You know what's so interesting, too? They're changing their landscape of politics there. With Chicago Go Red, we saw that in the last election. It's like they're eating their own, if you will. They're pushing against ICE, but at the same time, they're making more people say, on the Republican side of the aisle, they get this right. We're safer when they're doing their jobs.
I would also say if you look at the people that go out to protest these things, now, I don't know what their life story is. I don't know the shoes that they walk in. But by looking at a lot of the protests that we see, whether it's anti-ICE, anti-law enforcement, pro-Palestine, Queers for Palestine, anti-conservative, anti-Charlie Kirk, they all fit, a certain aesthetic. And it's not the people, to your point, Charles, that are underserved in their communities, that are wondering why illegal immigrants are taking up the entire budget, right, that are taking away their services and their community programs. Those aren't the people that are out there protesting. Those people are at work. Those people are making a living, right? By the looks of a lot of these people, it looks like a lot of younger, college age or older white people, maybe older white people, that's who are showing up to this. And you got to wonder, do you have a stake in this? Because a lot of the people in these communities, they want the worst of the worst to be out of them. And they also don't want their city budget to go to taking care of people who shouldn't be in this country in the first place because they came into it illegally. So a lot of these protesters, I would say, what are you looking to accomplish? And who are you fighting for exactly?
The subplot to all of this is anarchy, really.
Yeah.
And I think there's a really, beneath the surface, a real big rise, because it never goes away. But this sort of anarchy, anti-West, anti-America thing, that's what's driving them. That's what galvanizing them. But they're going to push the envelope too far, I think.
So that really drives the point home. These people that are shouting the loudest at these protests aren't the ones who have to live with the consequences day to day. They're not the families in these underfunded neighborhoods watching resources get stretched thinner and thinner. They're not the ones who send their kids to already overcrowded schools. And the truth is, a lot of these activists don't want solutions. They feed off the chaos and the anarchy. That's what the broadcast pointed out, and it's clear in how they operate. Thrive in disruption, not stability, because disorder gives them a stage. But the communities they claim to speak for don't benefit from chaos. They're the ones who pay the price when schools are overcrowded and resources dry up. At the end of the day, ICE's crackdown and these new security measures weren't about silencing free speech. They were about restoring order and making sure federal operations can't be shut down by people who feed off disruption but never face the cost. That's the reality check here. And when you've got a mayor who's basically taken the side of the protesters, denouncing ICE and the job that they've been tasked to do within his own city, it speaks to a bigger issue. It's not just Chicago. It's a mindset we see on the national level inside the Democratic Party, especially in cities they control. And that same mindset shows up again. Here's Jasmine Crockett saying, just because you commit a crime doesn't mean you're a criminal.
I understood what was kind of pushing them there. And so I do want people to know that just because someone has committed a crime, it doesn't make them a criminal. That is completely different. Being a criminal is more so about your mindset. Committing a crime can come for a lot of different reasons.
And that's exactly the problem. When you've got leaders saying things like, just because you commit a crime doesn't mean you're a criminal, It sends a signal that accountability is negotiable. Pair that with the mayor, who openly sides with protesters and denounces ICE. And you've created a culture where law enforcement is treated as the enemy, not the safeguard. But reality doesn't bend to that narrative. ICE had to crack down, install new security, and make sure federal operation couldn't be obstructed anymore. That's the reality check. You can play politics with the language, but at some point, the law reasserts itself. It's almost like if you leave it up to them, they'd expect you to accept everyone into this country, no matter what they've done, no matter how violent they are. And that mindset isn't just theory, it shows up in real cases. Thanks to the federal agents in Chicago, a sanctuary city, a man who had committed murder was able to slip through the cracks. ICE had to step in and do the job that the city wouldn't. And thanks to their work, he's off the streets now. And that's the reality. Without enforcement, without consequences, the system fails the very communities it's supposed to protect.
ICE picked up a guy who's really an example of the kind of problems you get with sanctuary policies. Aldo Salazar Bahena is his name, from Mexico. He was convicted in 2005 of a 2005 gang-related murder, I should say. In 2016, a federal judge revoked his status as a lawful permanent resident and issued a final order of removal. Salazar was paroled September 12, but due to sanctuary policies in Illinois, the Department of Corrections did not tell Immigration and Customs Enforcement that he was getting out, so he was released onto the street. On Sunday, ICE picked him up in Elgin.
And that's the biggest takeaway here. Now ICE will be able to do their job without protesters blocking gates, without vans and buses being stopped, without constant disruption. And just like we've seen on the ground, the shift has sparked a lot of conversation online. Social media has been full of people weighing in. And so let's take a look at some of those reactions. Thomas Lucas, 8140, says, "This fake news has pushed lies and hate for Democrats for years, and America sees through the evil and is praying for them to do better." Mr. Gabriel Jude writes, "Wow, that's horrible. Glad I'm not an illegal who skipped the line since my father served in Vietnam. Exposed to Agent Orange, naturalized through service in the U.S. Navy, and all of my Asian aunts and uncles he petitioned when they were little kids. Had to wait decades in process to come to the U.S. legally and become naturalized law-abiding citizens by the time they were adults. No sympathy here." Guitar Jim Burke writes, "Taco Trump always chickens out because ICE and Trump are morally bankrupt. Neo-fascism has no place in this country, but we do have it here temporarily. Taco and his thugs have no allegiance to the Constitution. Fake money changers will be cleared by the Almighty, most compassionate, most merciful." Paul 1907 writes, "What about when the abusive cowards physically harm people unnecessarily? A person was detained and then released with a black eye. If you lay hands on peaceful protesters, us okay? Torturing and throwing an elderly woman in a skirt to the ground is okay? The abusive short coward needs to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." Jeff 9270 writes, "Nothing happens fast in the legal system. This includes the prison system. Slowing an already slow system down with protests will only make things worse. Protesting is fine. Just know you're not going to speed anything up. And if you are belligerent, you just might get peppered." Cam 35 writes, "So much for freedom of speech we preach to the rest of the world. LOL, it never existed, just a myth. Fascism is here, boys and girls. We are the real totalitarian country." And Brandon 6131 writes, "People need to go home and read laws and stay out of the way. If someone is in the country without proper paperwork, then you're illegally in the country. If you have governor, mayor, chief of police not doing their jobs, they need to be removed as well. The law is the law, and they took an oath to America, and the laws of America clearly state that being in America illegally is not the correct way, and they need to be removed, no matter where you come from." In Chicago, weeks of protests turned into chaos, tear gas, pepper balls, and constant clashes until ICE finally said enough's enough, and now they've installed new security measures to prevent activists from blocking their facilities. That crackdown became the reality check, and it showed that freedom of speech doesn't mean obstruction, and consequences don't disappear just because politicians like Brandon Johnson and Jasmine Crockett try and blur the lines. Anyway, guys, if you enjoy any part of the content, make sure you smash the like button for more, subscribe to the channel, and as always, until next time.